Today's video session is Wigan Parent Carers Forum, speaking to the Integrated Transport Unit at Wigan Council. Good morning and welcome to our Wigan Parent and Carers Forum coffee morning chat. And for this for this chat today, we've got Steve Collins, who's from the Transport Department. And I just wonder if you wouldn't mind introducing us, Steve, to yourself and actually what you do at the Transport Department.
Yes, good morning. My name's Steve Collins. I'm the Transport Manager, the Business Manager for the Transport Team, the Integrated Transport Unit we're called. What we do is we manage and organise transport for homeschool children and also for the adult social care transport. Part of my role is also about the road safety team as well, which includes where my colleagues go out to schools and they deliver the road safety lessons. We also have road shows where we go out and try and promote road safety in the borough.
Travel training as well as part of your...
Oh yes, sorry, yeah, of course, yeah, travel training, that's been on hold at the moment, but yes, we do organise independent travel training for people up to the age of 18, and then it's a different department in adult social care then that take over, then support adults when they're doing their independent travel training.
Yeah, I feel quite passionate about travel training. I think it's essential if we want our youngsters to grow into functioning adults. We need to introduce them to be able to get to places. And I genuinely, I do the training for the adults travel training with Embrace, and you know, you're in a whole different world when people can actually get to places when they're not being transported by, you know, having to ask permission and book it. I do feel passionate about travel training.
Yeah, I mean, as we've spoken about, I come from a social care background, so I've seen firsthand how when an individual's given the opportunity to be that more, it's scary at first, and you know, with the right training, it opens up the world. And when somebody gets the opportunity to do something themselves for the first time, there is a real sense of joy that we all take for granted because it's things that were offered to us. So to give somebody that opportunity is fantastic, and you know, hopefully we'll get that back up and running again in September if we can, or whenever COVID regulations allow us.
Yeah, that's how we came about the questions. Is we had a coffee morning where we concentrated on transport, and we sort of asked families what questions they'd put to the team if they could speak to them, and we also asked them to send emails or on Facebook questions. So basically the questions are from parents and they're directly, and what we did is quite a lot of the questions were very similar, so we've condensed them into a few questions that we feel that if we get some answers around it will alleviate some of the anxiety for parents, but also then stop us having to ring and take your time up whilst we're doing that. So we'll go to the questions, and as I say, they are generalised. Some of them are around, obviously we've had so much change with the COVID, and so some of them impact on the COVID point of view, but also some of them are about how do we move forward, and some of them changes that perhaps parents can help form and help change for yourself at the department. So I guess the main question for most people that we came across was preparing children for going back to school and the anxiety. Obviously, none of us have ever been through any of this, and we're totally all new and trying different things. And thinking about going back to school, families are already trying on uniforms and doing that gentle introduction. But actually, the first step of actually going back to school is out the front door onto your transport. So there's going to be the massive anxiety around that. So when people have been talking about what the concerns were, is there anxiety around having information early enough to prepare the little ones? Quite a lot of them have complex difficulties and that consistency and continuity. So knowing who the support is going to be, I'm not sure whether you refer to them as escorts or PAs, but knowing who they're going to be and be able to prepare their littlies with perhaps even a photo of the person that might be the driver or whatever, and I appreciate some of that might be long-term planning because you've got a huge task ahead of what you've got at the moment, but also giving them enough time to be able to say, well, this is what time it's coming, that's how it's going to go, that's where it's going. So looking at what that time scale is before the actual date of the first day of school would be really informative for families.
No, I mean, I completely. I'm very aware of the, the acute anxiety that would be around not knowing what's going to happen next, and when that's, who the transport's going to be. It's going to be new faces, and it is something that we've been working on each year. This is my second year, and unfortunately, we've had COVID this year, and there is a process to get to the point where transport it must seem very simple, because I imagine for families who've been on transport and then the transport's continuing the next year, it would seem simple as well, it's going to be the same contractor, it's going to be the same passenger system, or why can't it be that? And in many cases that is what it will be, but there are a number of reasons why that mightn't be so. So for example, if the passengers on that route, when people leave, the route then has to be kind of restructured to be the most efficient as it can be. Sometimes new passengers are added. Occasionally we have to re-tender the route, which means going out to competition, or if the contract for whatever reason give their route back, or it may be a vehicle change, so we may need a bigger vehicle or a smaller vehicle, which can then means that there's a competition process. One of the issues that we have is that all of the information that we have to gather then goes out on the same letter. And I think while we may have information for some things may stay the same and it would be very easy to get that information out, others will have to be in wholesale change, and then there's a lot of things that we do. Well, we send all of the letters out together, and that's something that, following on from when we got this, we've had a discussion about what things that we can do better, because it's not good enough for us to just say, well, there's all these reasons, and it's the letters come out when they come out. It is something that we are aware of, and each year, I know last year we had some issues, and we've resolved them this year. We're hoping that the majority of the letters are going out today. Still a bit later than we'd hoped, but it's better than last year. And what we're aiming to do is get to a position where it's kind of middle of the summer. That's our ideal, would be middle of the summer. We've got the information together and we're going to get most of it out. But there are reasons why that can be delayed. But more than that, we're trying to see, because the letters are great, but as you say, for a lot of the people, it's what they can do about in terms of pictures, so that they can know who it is that's going to go. And there are barriers to that, and how can we break them down? And one of the things we've been talking about since we've had this, and it's been on my mind since last year as well, is how can we deliver the visual information to people. And one of the things that we've thought about, it's not going to be here this year, but in our kind of blue sky thinking, as you say, what we'd like to say, is there some kind of online portal where parents can log in, rather than sending the information out? Is there an online portal? And then as we get that information from contractors, so when we know that there's a PA that's being assigned to the route, well, we can get that information and parents can log in, and then there'll be a picture. I don't know how we'll go about it. It's still in the early the thinking stage at the moment. But that would be great, because then parents can log in and they've got some control over showing the pictures. If we can do that, that'd be brilliant. What I would say, if there is anybody that's really struggles with change, or would really benefit from having a picture, if they can email myself, then I'll work to try and, because we did do it for some people last year. We managed to get, if somebody said, well, it's a change of bus, my son or daughter isn't going to be able to cope with that, the best that we could do in that situation was to try and give them some the picture of the bus that they're expecting to go, the driver if we can, and certainly the PA, and that we found did help. So if there is somebody that is really struggling with the change, if it is going to be a change and a new person and a new vehicle, please feel free to give me an email. We're hoping the letters go out this week, for early next week, for the majority of people. If anyone wants to contact me, they're more than welcome to send me an email. We're very busy at the moment, so I might not respond immediately, but I will get back to them as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I guess it's that common sense stuff. If it's your concern as a parent, because you just need to know, we just need to provide everybody is mowed under. But actually, if it's a genuine need for the little person, and everybody that knows me, and that's most people probably watching this, will know that I call everybody little people. They're all littlies, even if they're this big. But if it is genuinely about them, then that is an option that is available. But it would take a little time.
Yes, definitely. And I think I know that we do have issues with our phones as well, which is that the phones can very quickly, if there's multiple, if people are phoning in, if the request isn't urgent, it's probably best to email in, and we'll try and respond to you as best as we can, because for information, if somebody, I know that it can be difficult to get through at times, especially during our busier periods, and even more so now while COVID, because a lot more people working from home, so there won't necessarily be the dedicated people answering the phone. So if people do have questions, they can email in, and we'll try and respond to them as soon as possible. I'll send you my email address as well, Sue, so you can add that to the website. I'm happy for people to email. I say we are very busy at this point and all of September, but I will do my very best to get back to people as soon as I can.
Brilliant, thanks, Steve. What else came up? One of the questions were, and this was regarding pretty much what we're talking about now, and it's more of a future plan, is that possibly that there could be a template of some sort that would introduce their little people to the staff that are going to support them during that time on the transport. And lots of these families have this information generally in the communities or places that they visit. That would possibly give a brief outline of particular youngsters. And this came to mind by one of our parents flagging up that their littlie had particularly heightened issues by sound, volume, totally oversensory on the transport, and that by the time he got to school, his escalation was really up here, and then school had an issue. And rightly, they contacted you, and you did a brilliant meeting, and you put some solutions in place to got around that. But what she was saying is what might have really helped in the first place was having like a grab sheet for her littlie that give a brief outline, a positive brief outline about some of the distractions that could have been used in that situation, so that the TA, although the PA, although they're not there as support workers, we know that, but would have been able to de-escalate rather than using keywords that escalated. And that would have made it so much more, you might start talking about trains, and I'm sure to come down out of that particular place I'm at, or a certain thing that, I might have something in my pocket that might just help. And we were talking about, this could be like a grab sheet that could be given to staff who are taking care of their littlies for a whole year and would have the opportunity to learn. So we wondered whether that would be a long-term plan. We appreciate you're totally inundated and not now, but also it wouldn't necessarily have to be compulsory, but also could have a little bit of information on there about things that are massively important to that littlie at that time. So that could be, I have an EpiPen in my bag, or not going into medical, because I'm mindful that sometimes clinical issues take over what should be personal centre documents. So I sort of thinking that it could be, I keep a snuggly in my shirt sleeve, or just things that would help that member of staff manage and introduce them. And also for the PA, if you can get the photograph of them, the TA, PA, a little bit about them, so that families could do that introductions were more personal centred.
No, I think they're really good ideas. And last year we had begun doing one-page profiles for individuals, and that was rolling out quite slowly. And each of the buses had their own kind of bus folder, because sometimes staff do have to be replaced at short notice. But one of the things we're doing this year is, in our letters that we're sending out with people, there is, taking on board what's been said, there is an additional sheet in there this year, which asks parents for some information about their young person that might help us and help the staff members. So what we'll do is we'll collate all that and try and get it out to the staff members in advance of the school term, if we can get it back quickly, or certainly as the year goes on. But it's a great idea, and it is something that we're keen to do. We are aspirational. It is something that we do want to kind of develop the service so that we are making the experiences as good as it can be for the young people, bearing in mind the constraints that we've got. What can we do to make things better around the edges? And if we can get that bit of information, so as I say, we're sending that out to all the parents this time around, and if they can fill it back in, we'll do our best to make sure that information goes out. And I think, coming back to the pictures of the PAs, is it a possibility, as we're saying, as we're doing an online portal, well, we've got this technology, that there may be something that we can do where they can have a video of themselves where they can say, "Hi, I'm Steve, and I'm going to be a PA this year. You know, I love football. I'm looking forward to meeting you." And then, as I say, it's not a shock for the person's face the first time, the person's voice the first time. And if there is something that they can connect with, then that's all the better. I don't know how we'll get there. I don't know if we can do it, but yeah, there's no reason why we can't look to do something like that in the future.
Families said that they'd be quite willing to come and maybe have a subgroup that we could do with transport and come and work with you. We can't expect you to do everything. It's part of us being our input as well, because it's important that we can't sit there and tell you how to do it. We really should be coming alongside and helping you to do it, and you know, that's important. And you know, maybe we can talk about that after you've got over September. And probably,
yeah, I think once we get through September, that would be great. And we, you know, it is something that we do after we're working in partnership. Ultimately, it's us with the parents and the children to try and get them to school and in the best in the best frame of mind, so that we're all feeling confident, and especially the parents and children have confidence in us and our service. So that's our aspiration, and I'm confident we'll get there. And each year I'm hoping we'll get better. And as technology improves, hopefully we can use that as well.
Next question. It was basically around the application form, and some families fed back that they wasn't able to add their child, as in they were 16 and over, and that seemed to stop at that stage. They couldn't do that. Have you put something in place regarding that?
Yes, there's the online form is for the homeschool 5 to 16, so that's for children who are going to the primary and high schools. There is a post 16 form that's now online as well. It's more like the old form that we used to have for homeschool, and that's specifically for post 16. And there's a post 19 form as well. So going forward, they'll be digital as well. But at the moment they would be, you can fill them in online and email them into the ITU mailbox. So that's a different form then. That's to try and separate them, because post 16 and the homeschool, essentially the transport offer may stay the same, but it might be that it's to know that the post 16 college age children, young people, that it's to keep those separate from the homeschool. That's more for our purposes than for anything else, because it is kind of, the regulations are different for people who are post 16 and then post 19 as well. So it's just to make sure that we're giving the right offer to the individual.
I think I think that makes it much clearer. But I think if somebody is coming up, and I guess when you fill in the forms in, and the forms, they may change to 16. Are we looking at what happens at what age they will be when they start that setting at September?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So if somebody's 15 in September this year, but they'll be 16 sort of December or whenever that may be, it would still be classed as homeschool. It would only be if they're 16 on kind of 1st of September is probably the best rule of thumb. When they're going into the new school year, whatever that may be, if they're going to college in September and they're 16 at that time, so that would be the post 16 form that they would be filling in.
So also one of the big questions, and I think this is a national question, regarding criteria of transport application, and how that has always been a shifting sand, because every child is individual and should be looked at individually. But I think specifically where your form now talks about having an EHCP upload onto that form, that families are going, well, I won't be able to have one then, and then they're coming back to us and going, well, does that mean transport stops? So just a bit of clarity about that.
Yeah, I mean, the online form is a bit of it's a great thing really to try and speed up the process, and especially for parents to get on the whole to get a response, because they'll know that the form's been submitted. Because in the past, when people have sent it in by the post, you hope that the post arrives, or it might not, and then you don't get an answer. Whereas at least now with the online form, when it's submitted, you'll get a bounce back email to say the form's come in, and then you know then that the form is with us to be approved, or at least to be reviewed anyway. And then once the decision's been made, then you'll receive, once we kind of approved it, then you'll get an email straight away, so you know the transport's been approved, and then there's a waiting period for us to get the letter of exactly what that offer is. It takes longer in the summer because we're generating all the letters as the year goes on. If people have applied through the year, then that process should speed up, and it lets parents know that we've received it and that they've had it, and the response is much quicker. We found now the EHC plan, and what we're looking for is to try and gain. There are the eligibility criteria is kind of vague in a way, but it's set out in our homeschool transport policy, which is in line with the government guidelines, and that's what forms our homeschool transport policy, post-16 policy and post-19 policy. Now, in terms of who's eligible, it would very much depend on that person's needs. So it's hard to give a fixed answer. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is ineligible for transport if they don't have their EHC. Sometimes people are in the process of having one. Sometimes at primary school, for example, they may not get the EHC until they start school. And we are reviewing the form. Once the dust is settled after this, we are going to go back, because when you test it, it seems great when we're kind of testing it in the office, but then when you get hundreds of applications, that's when it's getting its real test. And so in the necessity to upload an EHC will be reviewed at the end of the term, not the end of the term, at the end of this process. So we're looking at, once we get into the autumn, and we will be reviewing that and what's required, because there's also about medical evidence as well, which is there to kind of reinforce that. And they are slightly different in terms of what the person's eligibility is, and kind of more, not so much about eligibility, but what the offer will be. The EHC plan, it does give us, the form is very limited in any form that we have about information, whereas the EHC plan can give us a great deal of understanding about that individual, and actually, you know, what where they're up to in their kind of independence. Are they at the point there where actually maybe not this year, but maybe in a couple of years' time, we think they'll be a good candidate that we could look at introducing to the idea of travel training, or it might be that they're at that point now. So the EHC plan is good for that. However, is there a better way of doing it? Well, we're going to review that, and we certainly didn't want people to feel that they couldn't apply because of a lack of EHC, and we need to get around that. So we'll be reviewing that at the end of this current process. Once we get to sort of mid to the end of September, we'll be going back to the developers and seeing what we need to change, having a meeting, taking on board issues. So maybe for the next meeting, if we could maybe focus on that, or the next time we get together, the difficulties that people have had, that would really feed into what because we've got information we know ourselves that needs to be better and needs to be changed. Anything else that you hear will really feed into how we can improve that for this time next year when we go around it again.
Yeah, that's not a problem. We could perhaps do a workshop on that come sort of October when things are settled. Brilliant. Okay, so the next thing is about particular PPE and transport, and what they I can combine two questions there, is the children and transport, and also the staff and transport regarding PPE. Families were concerned regarding, obviously, the PPE, the wearing of PPE for, let's think, taxi drivers, the staff that are on the bus, but also children. So I appreciate this is shifting sand from a government point of view, and that will be changing, I would imagine, daily for yourself. But what are you imagining that might look like for September?
Well, we've just received the guidance from the government last week, so we've been trying to. That's something that's been, again, as part of the hold-up, is to know exactly what it is expected of us, or what the government are going to be looking for. Now we're issuing information with all of the letters that are going out this year just about that. So in terms of PPE, now all of our passenger assistants have been issued with face masks. Now, on top of that, what we're doing is we are working with the contractors to have enhanced cleaning schedules on the buses, so that all of the frequently touched areas, they're all cleaned and disinfected prior to the route beginning. When passengers are joining the transport, then will all the passenger assistants be given alcohol gel, so that we're going to encourage all the passengers to use that before they join the vehicle. The PAs themselves will be using the hand sanitizer intervals, and especially after they sort of support any individual, if they touch any of their, move their bag or do anything to support them in that way, then they'd use their hand sanitizer afterwards. It's not mandatory for the taxi drivers or the passenger assistants to wear the mask, but I'm sure that they will, and we'll be encouraging them to do so. In terms of the children and young people that are joining the bus, there's the rules, they're exempt from having to wear a face mask, but what the guidance has said is for children over the age of 11, if they can wear a mask, it would be good if they can. So we're encouraging parents and young people that if they can wear a face covering if they're over the age of 11, please do so, because that will help in the transmission. In terms of the social distancing, because the dedicated homeschool transport it's being treated as public transport, because it's the same passengers, the same staff members and the same driver, or it should be, on a daily basis, and they're not mixing with members of the public. So the social distance isn't mandatory, and it won't be as applied on public transport, although we'll do what we can where possible. Although the nature of our homeschool service means that the buses are fairly full, and that will remain the case. We are looking at how we can seat people. We're following all of the guidance as the government have given it out, and there's more information about that that's being sent out to parents.
Okay, and I guess, from our point of view at the forum, we've uploaded lots of information. I personally have myself onto our website, and that basically for people who don't know our website, and I'm going to put the email on, and we've downloaded and uploaded so much information on creating social stories, pictures of masks, what people might look like in a mask, what they might feel. So there are an opportunity for families to do some of that work previously, because obviously masks can be quite scary. So introduction and doing some work up front for families with loads of resources on our website. It's on the information board, so anybody wanting any of that, which also includes getting children back into school, we've got lots of information about talking and conversations. So that's on our information board, which I'll put that information up for people, because it is going to be different, and it's important that we prepare children as much as we can. So thanks for that. Some families brought up that there would be staggered school starts and finishes within schools. How have you managed that from a transport point of view?
It's been challenging. It is something that we've been working with the schools to do, to see where we can support schools where it's possible. Now, the special schools that we've been in touch with, we are working with them to see where that will be possible. On the whole, where we've helped where we can, so that each school is very different, and we've met with or we've spoken with all of the schools to see how they're going to operate. Now, between now and the start of school, I'm going to be contacting to complete our risk assessments about what that will mean but it's going to have to be for each school, so can't really give you a blanket this is what we're going to do. It's very much going to be in terms of schools. Some schools have got slightly late starts the first week, second week, and then the third week. On the whole, the contractors have been on board with that, because ordinarily they would have other jobs to go to, but at the moment I think for the first couple of weeks of school, that's something that they're really keen to help out with. In terms of where some schools are having different year group bubbles, that's slightly different about how we're going to manage that, and we're working with the schools to see how we can best do that, because how will our transport arrive and how will they then disembark, and that's things that we're working with the schools to make sure that we've got an idea of how that's going to go, but we don't have all the answers yet. We're working on it with schools between now and the start of term.
I guess there's an element of families realising that it's new for everyone, it's new for school, It's new for transport, and that there's going to have to be a certain amount of working through some of the issues if they do pop up, but they've no yardstick to measure and to go from. So it is the same for everybody. Be a bit patient while things do settle in and become more of a pattern and a regular process later down the line.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and I think the first few days, first week or two of school is always very, very kind of difficult, because you've got a lot of new passengers that are joining transport, you've got a lot of people that change in school, that are going to school, so everything's different for them, and it is very cause anyone anxiety. We'd all feel the same when we're going to a new job, and then you've got to get, if you're using public transport, how you get there. So it is, and over the course of the time, it finds its own equilibrium, and then the routine is set, and people know what time, approximately everything starts to settle down, and everyone kind of becomes familiar with what the routine is going to be. But we know it's not going to be as straightforward this year. It's challenging every year, and this is just a new thing that we're going to have to work together to overcome, and that means working with schools. Hopefully, if we can do all of our risk assessment, we'll have an idea, conversation with the school, and parents will be able to speak to ourselves or the school and see what it's going to mean for their individual school, and that might be the best way forward. And say we'll be working on that between now and the start of term.
Brilliant, thank you. You sort of covered the bubble question which we had on there, where there are almost like new bubbles, and that's going to be the regular. They'll have bubbles after school club and brownies and etc. Pretty much covered that. There was questions regarding travel train children who have already been and are successfully enjoying the travel training, and that actually is a different sort of prospect for them now, where the new guidelines come in place, and I just wondered if you could signpost us to some guidance that families could look at regarding how their little one would adapt to that, or is there something that you've got up your sleeve that you're going to put out at a later date?
It's a really good question, and something that until I've kind of read through the questions that you sent over, I hadn't really thought about. I don't think we'd be in a position where we'd be able to kind of all of the children who've been, or the young people who've been travel trained, to be able to go out and give them that kind of refresher training. But I wonder if there is something we could do in a similar vein that we're doing now, see if there's something that we can put on, that we can kind of maybe get a video and work along that. And that's definitely something that we'll look at. Not sure if we'll be able to get that in before the start of term, but it's certainly something that could look like perhaps over our road safety and our independent travel trainer, to see if there's something that we can do. I mean, in that sense, if you've got any questions, or if any of the families have got any questions that they'd like to submit about, particular that isn't already covered maybe on the government website, that's particular to them, if they want to email into ourselves, and then I'll look into that with our travel training team and see maybe if there is something on online, even a video that can kind of give some pointers and some advice about what might be different, and that's something we'll certainly look to do. I'd say I'm not sure if we'll get there before September, but it is something we'll work on and see if there is something that we can promote.
So, and again, maybe if families have questions, we could perhaps get a young person to do an interview similar to this, and fire in some of the questions they've had from other young people as well.
But yeah, I think the questions will come, and especially as it gets closer to term. So if anyone does have anything, if they want to email me, I'll try my best to answer them. And we're always looking for ways that we can improve as well. So I think in terms of what we can offer for the independent travel trainers, I think it might be, if we can get a video online, that'd be great. But please do give us all your questions about what you need to ask, what you need to know.
Okay. Just some of the families were sort of talking about the peak time travel to school, particularly thinking about more mainstream, where some of our littlies are in mainstream, and that the buses being full to capacity. Have you been involved with the local transport? And I know that's not within your control at all, but have you been consulting with Wigan around their transport and how they're going to deal with that come September?
Well, we in the ITU have fed into a conversation, but that's been managed by colleagues in the education team. They've been working with colleagues from Transport for Greater Manchester and also schools. So that's something that the education team have been working on. That I think there has been I'm under the understanding that there's been extra funding that's been made available to initially for that's coming from them, not for ourselves, but for the mainstream transport in terms of buses to try and to work with expanding the amount that's on offer. But that's really something that they're dealing with. So I do believe that there are plans in place, but I'm not too sure. I think they're trying to work on increasing capacity for when schools go back, but that's something, I'd say, the education. But I know that they have been working on that to try and find a solution, and we fed into it in our own small way. But that's something that they're working on. I know it's something that's in the process at the moment. I think the information only came out last week for those guys as well. So I think that they're obviously working on it as hard as they can before the start of term.
Yeah, one of the questions regarding families was their anxiety, and you know, we can't begin to imagine what this is going to be like for them. Quite a lot of kids have absolutely thrived in the school holidays. Some kids are ready to go back, and some are going, oh no, not quite like that. So they're anticipating quite a lot of issues regarding the start days. And I think all of us, all professionals, and I've been on many meetings where we're talking about anxiety, not wanting to go into school refusal, you know, getting back into that process for all children, not just children with difficulties. So some families talked about maybe doing a drop-off system themselves in the first couple of weeks, because they imagine they're not going to get them out of the door for the time that they're supposed to be. And then they were thinking that might impact on them, going, well, you could take them all the time, or is there going to be some flexibility and understanding around that families might just have all these problems in the first probably 2 or 3 weeks?
No, absolutely, and it's something that we've been working with the contractors as well, because we do have, and I've kind of amended the letter to say that we understand it's going to be difficult. It's a change for the first week or two, or for some people it may be longer. But what we're trying to do is encourage everyone to be patient in the first week or two, because it is going to be very different. A lot of people haven't been at school and have got into new routines now that they're having to break. So we know that it's going to be a challenge. So in terms of because there is waiting times that we expected, that's part of our contract with the contractors in terms of moving that along, and that it is ordinarily we wouldn't have a lot of time to wait, but we are working, say, especially at first, you know, it might take a little bit longer. Let's be prepared for that. Let's just try and move along as well as we can, and that's going to be, you know, there's going to have to be a dialogue there. If we are having difficulties, then, you know, please keep in touch. We know that we'll be speaking to the contractors, we'll be speaking to the PAs. We know everyone's going to be in a rush, but let's just be sensitive to the fact that this is a bigger change than usual, because it's been longer than 6 weeks for a lot of people who may not have been in school. And, you know, and for families as well, getting used to getting up at different times and then getting their routine. So we do know it's going to be a bit of a struggle. So we just need to all be prepared for that. So we're working with contractors, our staff, just to encourage them to say, look, we know it's going to be difficult. Obviously, as the time goes on, we'll want to get back to it running as smoothly as possible. That's best for everyone. And we know that there's, you know, big pickup times. We just have to have that dialogue. In terms of if parents are taking their children into school for the first week, no, it won't make any difference to their eligibility. Their place is on that transport, and it will be there when they're ready. If they can let us know, if they can email and tell us their plans, what that means is that we know, if they email us and say, look, we are taking our son, daughter in this week just because we know it's going to be, they might not be ready for when the bus comes. We don't want to hold everyone up, so we're going to take them in, but we're working on getting them back on the bus for week 2, week 3, however it may be. That's absolutely fine. We know then we can prepare the contractor, we can prepare the passenger assistant, because it's important to know that, to try and get that information out as best as we can, to if one or more passengers isn't on the bus, and obviously they're getting to their pickup times a lot sooner, and then that's what people get used to, and then it's just making sure that we can let everyone know, okay, it might be quicker this week, but there are, you know, a couple of passengers that aren't on transport this week, but they will be coming back on. So, and it's managing that then so that people know when their transport's due to arrive.
I'm working on that theory back to what you said earlier, that they're better emailing that information in so you can pick it up rather than the phones then being all at 8 o'clock buzzing for yourself. So it's better with an email.
Yeah.
And you can pick that up preferably before would be good. So if they say, well, I'm going to try 2 weeks of taking them in and get them bedded back in, because actually that routine is going to take that long. But basically email is a better way for you just generally.
I think so. If people know that something's coming up, if we can, the more advanced notice that we can get for things, the better, we can kind of account for that. And I think email is good. If somebody knows somebody's not coming in the next day, if they email in kind of any time up till lunchtime, then that'll be picked up, and that's kind of, it saves a phone call, and it probably saves somebody waiting on the phone or trying to get through, and then which is time consuming for them. If people can send the email, then we will receive that. And then, hope it's emergencies aside, sometimes if there's an emergency that you need to let the information, you're going to try and ring. But again, at some points, if there's something happened in the morning, it might be that they can't get through. So if they send an email, then I would still appreciate the email. If they are struggling to get through, they're under pressure to get somewhere, they're taking their son, daughter themselves for whatever reason, or they know that the transport's there's an appointment that's come up last minute, so they've not managed to tell us. Some information is better, and especially if they need to move on, they can. But if it's an emergency and they need to get through and they need to speak to somebody, they could send an email saying, look, there's an emergency, but then potentially keep trying, but we'll be aware of it then. I think email then takes that pressure of being stuck on the phone if they need to deal with something, in their lives. If they can give us that information via email, then I know that's great. Telephone call, brilliant if they can get through and everything's going well. If not, and they've got advance, please email. Yeah.
That's really answered most of the questions that we've asked today. Just out of curiosity from myself, I know you're quite a small team, but just for people to get a brief understanding, how many people are you expecting to travel? Because you work in children and adults, and I don't think people appreciate you do both, but how many people are you expecting to travel in one day from the Wigan Borough that you organise?
It's roughly 900 children, and that number goes up as year on year. So this year it's approximately 900 young people, sort of homeschool, 5 to 16, 16 plus. But then we do approximately 400 adult passengers go to various day centres every day as well. I think it was somewhere in the region of, I think if I remember rightly, there's 170,000 different homeschool taxi journeys a year is what we do, and that's all the different routes running twice a day. And so yeah, it is. There's 4 of us in the team on the whole that work in the ITU. There's myself, Michelle Owen, who's a contract manager, Serena Carter and Luke Ballard, who are both transport officers, and they do the day-to-day planning for the routes for all of the different schools and special schools, mainstream schools, and out of borough schools, because we transport schools in and outside of Wigan Borough as well. We do have business support who may answer the telephones, but they wouldn't necessarily have all the information. So quite often when they'll may take the call, and then that's then transferred over to us. So it's busy. It's busy. It's always very busy, but we try our best. We don't always get it right, but we really do try our best, and it is something that we're all committed and to supporting the children of the borough as best as we can. We really are.
That's great, and that's a great place for us to end our conversation today, Steve. So Thank you so much for coming on behalf of the
thank you for your time. Brilliant. All right, thanks very much, Sue. Have a good day.
Thank you.